Amazing mythical discoveries explained. Number 8. A werewolf skull discovered in a farmer's field in Macedonia. In the village of Novo Selo in Macedonia, a Bulgarian-born farmer called Dragonov was plowing through a new section of his field when he came across an odd box sealed shut with chains. Being a curious guy, he popped it open and found a weird skull with a long snout and fangs. Luckily for him, there happened to be a historian in town. Philip Ganev was doing local research for his book on the Balkan Wars and met the farmer who showed him the skull. Ganev made some photos and shared them with wildlife officials who recognized the jaw structure as that of a wolf, but the skull had a large cranium which only occurs in primates. The other villagers aren't thrilled with Mr. Dragonov's discovery. They are angry with him for disturbing the Vrockalok and think the farmer will be reborn as one of his impotents. Mr. Dragonov doesn't care and is happy to show off his trophy to anyone who wants to see it. Number 7. The dead fairy found in the countryside of Derbyshire. Back in April of 2007, a British dog walker discovered the mummified corpse of a tiny fairy at Firestone Hill near Duffield. The skin and teeth were still there. What was left of its wings looked a lot like brittle dried leaves, and there was even a bit of red hair left over. X-rays showed that, although it had the skeletal structure much like the anatomy of a human child, its bones were completely hollow, just like that of a bird. The internet was all in a rage for a fair few days before a man called Dan Baines, who was in fact a Derbyshire resident and professional props maker, confessed to this April Fool's prank on his blog. Mr. Baines is also a magician entertainer and enjoys crafting all sorts of illusions, and declares himself to be a believer in fairies as well. The prank was so successful, it got coverage from the BBC. And although Baines himself admitted to the hoax, there are still people who think the fairy is real and that Baines' confession is just a forced cover-up. Number 6. The giant skeleton that hopped around the globe. In 2004, while searching the land for resource deposits, a gas exploration team in southeastern Saudi Arabia came across a mind-blowing archaeological discovery: the fossilized skeleton of a giant. Understandably, it sent the whole country along with the internet into an uproar, especially since there have been similar discoveries in Greece and other countries as well. However, later that year, another giant was dug up in India, along with tablets inscribed with fragments of ancient Vedic texts. The only trouble was, the giant skeletons were too similar. The whole thing was revealed as a hoax which started as an art competition. The Worth 100 website, now known as Design Crowd, hosted a contest in digital photo manipulation with the subject Archaeological Anomalies. These pictures were based on a mastodon excavation site near Hyde Park in New York. Someone then linked them to an imaginary internet story, and it all spiraled right out of control. Number 5. Mummified fairies in time and humans found in a London basement. Back in 2006, an old sealed basement was found underneath an orphanage in London. When it was opened up, it revealed a myriad of bizarre treasures: dissected skulls, mummified tiny corpses in bottles, study kits for vampire anatomy, and most famously, mummified fairies with outstandingly well-preserved wings pinned to corkboards or laid onto cotton and glass cases. Alex C.F., the curator of the Grizzly collection at the Maryland Cryptid Museum, pulled possibly the coolest marketing campaign ever. You see, Alex is an artist as well as a writer, and all these weird artifacts are, in fact, his handicraft creations. He also wrote an entire backstory about their original owner, Thomas Theodore Maryland, as well as elaborate true facts about the artifacts themselves. While it didn't take long for the people of the internet to figure out they were being hoaxed, the collection nonetheless took the online world by an ecstatic whirlwind, and people believed it for a fair while. 4. A dragon with feathers, which didn't fly, used to live in China. Most of us would imagine dragons, no pun intended, as these huge, bloodthirsty, fire-breathing, overgrown lizard monsters with bat wings, and probably in all the colors of the rainbow too. Nowadays, we know about the Komodo Dragon, which is basically a gigantic lizard, although with no bat wings or fire-breathing ability, alive and kicking on the island that is its home. But as of 2015, there is some heated debate over the possibility of a feathered dragon. A Chinese farmer from the northeastern Liaoning province who wished to remain anonymous stumbled upon a pretty weird fossil on his land. It was a dinosaur, and most likely a very close cousin of the famous Velociraptor, but this one had wings with long patterned feathers, which it never used to fly. Apparently, it also had a tail in the same basically useless fashion. Archaeologists believe that this dinosaur was a sort of middle link between the ancient dinosaurs and the modern-age birds they eventually evolved into. The creature whose fossil this is could never fly because it was too big, as in around 2 meters long, and with a weight to match. Scientists presume that it used its long feathers in multiple layers for display purposes, like some kind of living decoration, probably to attract a mate or for a show of dominance. What makes it all so weird is that this feathered dragon was found in China. Although the dragon is a very prominent creature in their folklore, all Chinese dragons look like enormous snakes with claws gliding through the sky with huge whiskers like catfish. And now they've got themselves a prehistoric chicken. Number 3. The skull of a revered Cyclops ancestor in the Philippines caves. In the backwater areas of Bohol at Mount Palupao in Sumilao, Bukidnon, and in some parts of Agusan, the local tribespeople were completely baffled when they discovered skulls of what appeared to be Cyclops. Although the name Cyclops comes from Greek mythology, one-eyed giants are a popular motif around the world, and these folks seem to have found a few. They believed in gigantic early settlers, the most popular being Agyo, who fought the first Spanish conquistadors. Archaeologists from the National Museum launched an excavation and discovered more skulls like that in local limestone caves in Bohol. The archaeologist Ray Santiago said that studies showed the skull they found really did belong to an ancient settler, but a human one, because limestone and human bones have similar composition. He supposed that there was a chemical reaction which formed a hole in the skull resembling an eyeball socket. The tribesfolk still prefer their ancient one-eyed hero, though. 2. A dead werewolf floating along in a local Brazilian river. One peaceful afternoon in April, back in 2015, two fishermen from northeastern Brazil were enjoying a relaxing fishing trip together when they came across something equal parts disgusting and disturbing in the shallow water. It was a huge floating corpse of some nondescript beast with enormous fangs and very little fur left. In fact, it had already gone purple and black with decomposure, and the smell was horrendous. But it looked so eerily humanoid, and it didn't take the fishermen long to reach a conclusion. They had stumbled upon a dead werewolf. While common legend holds that werewolves are killed with silver bullets which revert them back into their human form upon death, this one could have died from anything, a heat stroke, or being hit by a vehicle. Some skeptics argue that it's just a dead bear whose fur fell off while decomposing, and it was in such bad shape there was no way to tell. Number 1. A mummified finger of a giant found and disappeared in Egypt. This might be just about the most bizarre thing anyone ever found buried in a pile of sand. Back in 1988, Gregor Spory, an entrepreneur and wannabe treasure hunter, met a funny old man with a funny old relic. Allegedly, he had to pay this old man, who said he was a retired grave robber from Cairo, $300 just to see this thing and take a few pictures. He was a robber, all right. The grotesque finger was 38 centimeters long, all dried up, cracked, dark, moldy, and smelled downright nasty. It was supposed to have been found at the gravesite of a giant mummified creature near the pyramids of Giza. Scientists did a reconstruction, and if this was a finger from something similar to a human, it would have been around 5 meters tall. There were said to be x-rays and a certificate of genuineness, but nobody ever saw them. In 2009, Spory returned hoping to learn more, but both the grave robber and his treasure vanished. Thanks for watching DTR. Don't forget to click subscribe. Up next, 19 animals that will give you nightmares. Born. It had no upper incisors, but rather a dental pad at the front of its jaw, as is found in cattle. It had pointed molars in its lower jaw, much like the carnassials found in dogs. Some of the articles which were translated into English said that the male parent was a wolf, but the translation probably meant dog.